I was disillusioned by the education system as a boy, and I felt like my greatest strengths were treated as behavioral issues. And at about the age of 14, I found myself inside of 3 different schools within 9 months. I ended up dropping out of high school at around 16.
Unless we radically reform the school system of the United States, radically reform, unless we somehow prepare them for citizenship because they're not prepared now, the future of this country, both politically and economically, is seriously in question.
We now live in a new world and require a new paradigm of education. So I've taken my education into my own hands, and I'm traveling the world seeking out my own mentors, teachers, and experiences to build my own self-directed and self-determined education. Follow me as I seek an education in the world. So I'm here in Marseille in the south of France, and I'm here to catch up with Chris and have a conversation with him. He's a really interesting guy. He's traveled the world, spent a lot of time in South America and Brazil, done a lot with ayahuasca. He lived in India and did a bunch of yoga stuff in India, and he's currently driving from Ireland to Portugal in his van, and he's really into his breath work and body practices, which I find extremely inspiring, and has a great online business serving people all around the world. So we're gonna hang out with him for a bit, have a conversation, and see what we can learn from his lived experience. So what was the story of your education?
Look, we were talking before, for generations, literally tens of thousands of years, men and women as well, there has been warrior culture. There has been people that go out into the land and do things, build things, move things, use our bodies. And now from when we're age 5, we're put into these classrooms, okay, for literally 6, 7, 8 hours a day. And we're told to sit down, be quiet, concentrate, and pay attention to this stuff. And some of the stuff, valuable information, sure. Some of it, a lot of it, for me at least, was just, it seemed useless, unnecessary, painful. I was always in class and I'd just be looking out the window. There was just somewhere else I wanted to be. And very little of it was about honoring the individual and their own unique talents and who they are. It was just about, okay guys, get in here like a herd, sit down, learn this stuff, learn this Irish or geography or this stuff. Whereas there was a million other things I wanted to be doing. But as a society, we're like, this is what you do, you educate, right? You educate people, you expand the mind, you build the intellect, you teach about our culture and the way we do things. And then over time, people get, essentially we build the modern person who conforms to society, who contributes to society. What if you didn't come here to actually contribute to society? What if you came here with a different purpose?
What sort of purpose?
Well, I don't know, disrupt society, make some fucking changes, do something completely different. Lead people, break down old, outdated systems that don't work or don't serve people or don't really encourage the flourishing of human potential. For the last 14 years, 13 years, I've been into personal development, and everything that I teach and I do now is about people, communication, psychology, it's about business, it's about leverage, it's about entrepreneurship, it's about self-empowerment. None of that stuff I learned in school. I didn't even touch into any of it. I was learning a dead language for an hour, 2 hours a day. It was being taught extremely poorly, and by age 18, I couldn't even hold a basic conversation in the language. The amount of time and energy that is focused on things that for me, they're there to keep an old structure in place. But for me, that old structure is not serving a lot of people. Well, the old structure is basically, we are cogs in the machine, right? So we work 8 hours a day, you get weekends off, you get a couple of weeks off a year. That's the paradigm. Why do people work 8 hours a day? Well, people work 8 hours a day because Henry Ford and the boys in America, when they were building cars, figured out if people start working longer than that, the risk of injury and mistake goes up. So it's like, okay, we'll build this general workday. Yeah, it doesn't mean that that's what a human is supposed to do, right? That's one thing. Okay, so we're in this prison of like, okay, I work 8 hours a day and I take my weekends off, right? So there's that. The next thing is you work for someone, right? So there's the slavery of thinking that you should be an employee. Like when I grew up in Ireland, it's like, okay, what are you going to do in university? What do you learn in university? You learn how to be a doctor, a psychologist, a mathematician, I don't know, something like this. But there's such a limited number of possibilities that is given to the average person. There are so many things you could do. There are so many things you could be. You could be a transformational speaker. You could be a healer. You could be an artist. You could be a dancer. You could be all these things. And in some cultures, like America, for example, is a little bit better at encouraging you can do and be whoever you want to be. But often, it might be just seen as an extracurricular, artistic type of thing that you could maybe do, right?
And a nice little add-on or addition to,
a real job. A real job, right? Or if it's entrepreneurship, it's like, okay, you might, start a basic business that's already established. You could start a mechanic business or start a store or something like this, right? Whereas when after starting out my coaching business, right, I was at zero and I didn't know what I was doing, but I found an incredible mentor, same guy who you worked with as well. Within 1 year, I brought that business from zero to $42,000 a month. And I couldn't believe, every single milestone I hit in that first year, hitting $10,000 in a month, I was like, I thought if I could do that, that would just be beyond incredible, right? I didn't really know many people that's $120,000 a year. I didn't really know many people that had done that. Yeah. It took me about, 2 months or something to do that. $25,000 a month, wow, that's just insanity. 8 months in, I did that. And I was making $42,000 a month coaching people on the internet, working 2-3 hours a week within a year of starting out. So those possibilities exist, but they only exist when the individual has access to the information that allows them to create that type of result. For example, leverage. Leverage is not taught in school, right? What is leverage? Well, it's instead of you being the guy who builds the friggin' house, you get other people to build a house, or you get a machine to build a house. And then you build more houses, right? You leverage energy, other people's energy, your information, automation, software, whatever it is. Yeah. It's the most powerful, like Aristotle once said, if you have a lever long enough, you can move the world.
I love that quote.
So
give me a place to stand and a lever long enough, and I can move the world. Yeah, it's a beautiful quote. Yeah. And so you were, over this school environment, learning Irish, and that it wasn't sticking, and all these unnecessary things, and that education kind of didn't work for you. So what did you seek as like a bit of an alternative if the traditional model was trying to put you into a Ford motor factory?
I just went traveling really, and I worked for people, and I worked a couple of gigs over in the States, and I always found that inside those jobs I was trying to get to the top anyway, and I was always extremely hard working. I was in New York City and I was working in bars, and I was probably working a bit too hard. because it was just about how much cash can you accumulate, and the idea being if I accumulate enough cash then I can open my own bar or something like that. So I always kind of had that vision to do something, right? And I think that's from my parents. They both ran businesses when I was growing up. The real stuff started for me when I could see myself working very compulsively in New York, like working way too much, like crushing myself really. And I started to live very, very much up in my head. So I was bartending, and I was shaking cocktails and stuff, right?
Yeah, I could see doing that.
Yeah. It was entertaining, but you had to work like a machine because there were so many people, you'd have to move so fast. So I'm moving around, pivoting, this thing, that thing, that thing, that thing. Then next thing I'd wake up on a Monday morning and I'd be like, okay, get up in bed, open the drawer, put on the socks, right? Go into the coffee, walk into the store. And I was like, my mind is crazy. Like I'm in a constant state of what's next, how do I get there? How do I get there most efficiently? And I was starting to work like this machine, right? And that's kind of what this culture invites us into, is use your mind for everything, right? It's like the power of the mind. So I started to see the dysfunction in this, and I started to look at where it was coming from. And I realized it was all really about me trying to create some form of security in my experience. The more safety nets I had, the more walls I built, then I'd actually be safe. But that unsafety at the core was really about stuff from childhood. It was about my parents' divorce. It was about my dad leaving the house. And it was the uncovering of that and seeing that set me on a totally different path. So there was plant medicine, there was traveling the world for best part of a decade really. And just doing a lot of different things, from yoga to kung fu to meditation, and to eventually going really deep into somatic work, body work, healing work, emotional work, these type of things. And the more work I did, I'd say, unraveling knots and getting to source level authenticity, who I actually am, what actually makes me tick, what do I actually want to do, what do I actually enjoy doing. That's really what sent me deeper and deeper into coaching, into working with people, into helping people, because it was always the natural progression. You go through challenge, you fuck up, you break yourself down, you find answers, you find solutions, you heal, you get inspired, and you want to give back. And this is really the essence of the hero's journey. And a lot of the people I meet are also on this path too, right? They've been through something in their life, and they want to make meaning out of their suffering, out of their story, right? They want to give back in some way. And I really think this is, it's not the path for everybody, right? But it's a path, mentoring, helping people, that isn't really given as, here's one of your chocolate box options in school.
Yeah.
Right?
It's not at what's it called, Careers Day. They don't have those options.
Yeah. But it's just one example of, like, I work with a guy who just made 52 grand in a month helping people build what he calls secret kingdoms, right? He's just basically helping people set up bases in different parts of the world. Wow. Right? So there's so much possibility there in the terms of your offerings, your gifts for the world. And typically these are going to come out of your life experiences, your stories. And there's value in that. Yeah. There's value in suffering, there's value in experience, there's value in a lot of things. But school doesn't really teach us that.
No.
So.
Yeah. And so you went on a journey to, like, I guess, empower yourself and find, like, geographical freedom, financial freedom, time freedom. And where did that journey lead you?
Yeah, well, I mean, when I got my coaching business to a pretty high level, I was working with like 20 pretty empowered dudes in a group, and I was getting a lot of notoriety and praise and all this kind of stuff. I still found that it was always about what's the next month, what's the next thing, what's the next product, and I wasn't really in a state of gratitude or presence with what I'd already worked so hard to create. And so that's what really, on the deep emotional journey. And I guess the thing that I've realized is that no amount of external things are ever going to fill an internal void, right? If there's deficiency there, if there's deep fear there, if there's a little boy who's lost inside and he feels lonely and he's scared about, you know, if his dad loves him or not, or if he's good enough or not, that little boy needs to be met and held. And that's the work that we all have to do, because I think in this society where we're all brought up, everybody to some extent is traumatized, right? Whether it was at home, we didn't get the recognition or the praise or the comforting or the security we needed, or if it was in school and we didn't just fit in and we were basically growing up with a bunch of crazy kids raising each other, right? Or just society or just culture who is trying to constantly put us in a box. And we lose ourselves because we start trying to be someone to fit in or to get love or to do whatever. Whereas when we go on these deep journeys, often we can come and we can see that I've been shutting myself down, and I've been acting. I've been trying to be somebody that I'm ultimately not really at my core.
What do you think is the good life?
What's
the good life?
Well, that's for everybody to decide themselves, you know?
Yeah.
Like, I don't know, you know, like, like a couple of years ago I was in intense warrior mode and I was enjoying building business. Right now I'm traveling around the van, in a van around France, and just kind of living much more free and simple. And I found myself, oh cool, I'm selling loads of books, I'm coaching loads of people, I'm speaking at events. But I was still stressed out. Whereas, I don't know, a week ago I'm parked in some farmer's field with nobody around and it's kind of raining, but I'm just cooking some eggs and drinking some tea.
They look like some good eggs.
And I'm happy, man. Yeah. I'm happy just being. It really doesn't take that much. So you got to follow your bliss, is what Joseph Campbell would have said. And I think that's the most important thing. If you are embarking on an entrepreneurial adventure, that you stay true to what really makes you happy. Because at the end of the day, it's not just about hustling and grinding and pushing constantly. If you're sacrificing things like your art, your play, your fun, your dance, your music, your friends, if these things make you happy, do these things, whatever they may be, you know?
To reflect back to a younger Chris, maybe my age or maybe even younger. You know, what would be the how would you want him to approach the next years of his life? What sort of philosophy or ideas, or, you know?
If I was your age, 22.
22 or maybe 18 or something like that.
Yeah. Well,
travel, like open yourself up to new ideas.
I actually wouldn't change anything. I'd say you're right where you need to be.
Yeah.
Because the thing is, when you do enough of this work, you realize that everything that I'm moaning about here, saying the school system's fucking, it's trauma and everything's, you know, needs to change, it was ultimately all that stuff that shot me. It was the suffering that shot me onto the path to seek a different way, to seek other possibilities. I think if I could give advice to somebody else, is I'd try and say something like, there are so many possibilities that you cannot see. And if you are in your environment surrounded by certain people who have a certain story about you and you see yourself as a certain way, I'd say that you are actually much more than that. And the possibilities that exist for you in your life are actually beyond your wildest dreams. But you need to get beyond and out of your current matrix, we'll call it. So matrix actually means womb, right? And we're all trapped in different matrices at different times in our life. You know, school being the first prison that we find ourselves in, right? And I believe our purpose here is nothing less than cracking out of the prisons that we find ourselves in, right? Prisons of identity, prisons of conformity, prisons of limitation, and into authenticity. And the more we land in authenticity, we land in a place of pure potential, and that everything is actually okay and everything is just the way it should be, right? So, yeah. So I'd say you're right where you need to be,
Yeah.
but if there's an edge somewhere and you see that edge and it's inviting you into it, even if it's scary, get closer to that edge. Because if you step off it, even though it's scary and you need to take a leap, I'm more than certain that you'll be held, you'll be caught, and what is on the other side of that edge is basically everything that you're looking for. It's there to meet you. So that's what I'd say.